The only thing that we're interested in is putting money in your wallet. If you want to bet the fights, if you want to have a little bit of action, you are in the right place. With my partner, Ian Parker, I am Brett Okamoto.
We're ready to rock between our parlays, our props, our straight picks. It's time to make money. Let's go.
Winter is officially over. We are in sunny Miami, where it is hot, the weather is beautiful, and everybody is out for UFC 287. It's going to be a big one. It's Alex Pereira taking on Israel Adesanya for the second time since November, when Israel Adesanya was winning that fight, lost it in the 5th round via TKO. He has now lost to this man 3 times across 2 different sports. This is probably his last shot to get it done against Alex Pereira. Cannot wait for this 185-pound main event. I am Brett Okamoto, as always, alongside Ian Parker, and we are not only bringing in April, we are celebrating a pretty darn good March, right? I mean, not every month is going to be just an absolute heater, hot streak, probably. But when they are, we like to celebrate them a little bit. So talk about your March.
Yeah, it was good to have a nice comeback here. We went 17-3 in our best bets, which really felt great. I actually a little disappointed. I felt 2 of those cards should have been clean sweeps. And then 3-0 in our prop bets. All 3 of those bets at plus money odds. Our new segment, Prop of the Night. I know it's become your favorite, absolutely mine, and for our pockets. Should be for everybody else as well. We've had a great March. Looking forward to an even better April.
Yep. Well, give yourself a pat on the back and then get right back to work, because you're only as good as your last fight, as they say in this one. So we want to keep the ball rolling at UFC 287. Let's take a look at this UFC 287 main card. You can find it on ESPN+. The standard time, 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific. Whew, look at this card, man. UFC 287, I really like it. Alex Pereira taking on Israel Adesanya, as I mentioned right off the top. That was actually my favorite fight of 2022. I just thought the momentum swings, each guy making tiny little adjustments, the familiarity. Absolutely love that fight. I'm really expecting this second one to be terrific as well. Gilbert Burns taking on Miami's own Jorge Masvidal. Obviously, the city's up for that one. Rob Font, Adrian Yanez, big-time bantamweight bout. That one's going to have big implications in the division. Kevin Holland, Santiago Ponzinibbio. That's a fun one, and also a very important one at welterweight. And then the kid, Raul Rosas Jr., taking on Christian Rodriguez. So we will get to some of those in depth here. And we're going to start, obviously, with the main event. I've teed it up, man. I think Israel Adesanya, he has teed it up. He has done a great job of talking about this fight. He has not shied away from the implications. He's saying, this is it for me. This is the final roll of the dice. I got to beat this guy. If I don't, they're going to be saying that I lost to him 4 times for the rest of my life, and that is not going to sit well with him and has a big implication on his legacy. A lot at stake. He seems very comfortable with it. And look at this, man. He's a minus 135 favorite. Still a favorite over this guy after losing to him 3 times. What do we think of this main event?
You know, I'm trying to ignore the narrative of the whole losing to him 3 times, because the 2 kickboxing fights, one of them, if you go back and watch, I actually thought he won by decision.
Yep.
And the other one, very familiar situation where he was winning and then he got knocked out. And in his last fight, he looked great. He really was fighting a very smart fight. Even in round 1, he had Pereira on skates. And I think for Israel Adesanya, he has to stay the course. He really needs to allow himself to win. As crazy as that sounds, as cliche as that might sound, he was winning in every aspect of that fight. And even with the takedowns, we may see some wrestling out of him. You know, he just cannot put his back against the cage and allow it to happen. Now, sometimes we were like, oh, he was fighting very safe in those title defenses. 6 out of his last 7 went to the 5th round. Or, you know, obviously he lost in the last one in the 5th, but went past almost to the bell. So for this fight, I'm going over 3.5 rounds here. I think for Israel Adesanya, he needs to make this fight the way he fought Jared Cannonier. It may not be overly exciting for the fans. However, Pereira's not going to let it be too boring of a fight. But for someone Adesanya, it's lateral movement, it's in and out, it's use that head movement and do not get overconfident. Each round should be treated as if it's the first round of the fight. If he does that, I do believe he could win. But for Israel Adesanya, he's got to take this fight to deep waters, not get overly confident, keep your back off the cage. Give me over 3.5 in this one.
I will tell you, I really do like the 3.5. For the main reason is because these guys are just so good and they're so familiar with one another. I mean, these guys have spent so many rounds inside, whether it was a ring or an octagon. I think that matters. I think that means once you're so familiar with an opponent and you're so skilled, I do think that sort of lends itself to a longer fight. I disagree with you, though, in that I really, truly think that Israel is going to come out different in this fight. I think he is going to come out aggressive. I think that if I know one thing about City Kickboxing, and maybe this is just the level of respect that I have for that team, they don't rest on their laurels. They don't look at that fight and say, hey, we were winning 4 rounds out of 5, and then we got caught. I think they're looking at it as, what can we do different to make – at the end of the day, we lost that fight. And I think that Israel's coming in, and maybe I'm just getting caught up in the narrative myself and maybe some of the things that he's saying, but I think – hey, you don't want to sit on the fence against this guy. You don't want to let him start to find his range and have his power mean something. I think he's going to go after him. I think he's going to put him on the back foot. I think he is going to look to wrestle a little bit. So if I am right and he comes out a little more aggressively, does that give you any pause to your overpick whatsoever?
Not at all. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think he needs to be a little bit more aggressive. He needs to keep Pereira on the back foot. Listen, if he puts his back against the cage, he's just playing with fire, and eventually, and he will get burnt. For Adesanya, you know what? He has the power to do it. I'm not saying to rest on the laurels per se. Everything you said is right, and I agree. Eugene Behrman at City Kickboxing always has a plan. I just think that the adjustments also need to be made by Pereira because you're not always going to be able to come back, and Izzy's a smart fighter. You look at that last fight, he was winning everywhere except for that one moment in that round, which he did it a couple times with the back against the fence. If he comes out a little bit more aggressive, he's just got to be careful of that left hook because that can be thrown at any point, and that can go night-night. And as long as that happens over 3.5, I'll be okay with it.
So we talked a lot about the over 3.5. Before we move on to the co-main, I do want to mention, because I think if the bettors are looking at a side, we have had in the UFC 15 immediate rematches when a champion loses the title. Only 3 of them have come back and won. So that is a 3-11 record so far. So history suggests that Alex Pereira will maintain. However, Izzy is kind of a generational fighter, I would say. So if somebody can go against that trend, I do think it's Izzy or Adesanya. Let's talk about the welterweight division. Jorge Masvidal taking on Gilbert Burns. I'm not surprised by this line, Ian. Sometimes, when we're doing this show, I ask you, are you surprised by the line? Gilbert Burns minus 475. I get it, but I also think you are paying an absolute premium on Gilbert Burns. So how are you comfortable with that, and how are you looking to bet the co-main event?
If you're going to take Gilbert Burns, you can throw him in a parlay, get some value out of there, because I can't risk that on a money line. That's way too much money, and we know that Masvidal still is a really good striker. He may be the better technical boxer in this fight. He just has to watch out for listen to me like it's an easy thing to do against Gilbert Burns. The ground game of Gilbert Burns is elite, and for a while, Gilbert Burns, once he started getting knockouts, he was falling a little bit in love with his hands. And the fight against Khamzat Chimaev, he got way more confident overall, I think, as himself, as an elite fighter. I think that was the one thing that was missing. Against Neil Magny, he was going against someone. Now, listen, is Magny top 5? No. But Magny is someone that always gives trouble from 5 to 10. He's durable. He's got great cardio. And Gilbert Burns made that look so easy. He made it look like Magny's never even fought before. No disrespect to Neil Magny. For Gilbert Burns here, this is an opportunity to get a really big name on his resume and possibly get a contender fight, whether it's against someone like Bilal Muhammad, and be the next one in line after that. But for me, Masvidal is at home. He's talking about retirement. I don't see someone like him giving up. I think he goes out on his shield. Yeah, we're going to go over again here, but over 1.5 rounds. I think Burns is going to stay on the feet a little bit. I think he wants to test the chin of Masvidal. Masvidal has pretty good takedown defense. So if you're going to take Burns to win inside the distance, I think it happens in the 3rd round, so you can look at that type of prop. But for me, I'm going over 1.5 rounds. I don't like that minus 400 Burns line. Yep. I also don't see Masvidal winning this fight.
Well, I like the fact that they're bringing up here method of victory odds because, like I said, every bettor needs to make a decision on their own in terms of how much risk they're willing to take on. If you really think, and here's for me, if I'm looking at maybe betting Gilbert Burns here at minus 475, I better be darn confident that he's just going to take this thing to the ground and just neutralize the threat of Jorge Masvidal. But when you want to talk about you're paying full price for a guy, I mean, Gilbert Burns was plus 150 against Tyron Woodley. He's plus 135 against Wonderboy, plus 400 against Khamzat. So now you're looking at minus 475 against a guy like Jorge. Again, I just want to put it out there. I'm not telling you don't bet Gilbert Burns, but just know that you are paying absolute every penny on it.
And you know what? Masvidal has not been submitted. I think it was since 2009 we talked about against Toby Amada. That's been a long time. He does have good jiu-jitsu off his back and defensively. Burns is a monster on the ground. We'll see how that goes.
And I got to be honest, so I've misplaced my notes here. We are going to, which fight are we going to next, Jake? We're going to go to the kid, Raul Rosas Jr. We're going to feature him a little bit, and then we'll let you talk about the rest of your main card. He's coming in 7-0. We talked about him in his last fight, and I was like, I just don't know how you can put such a high price on a kid with such very little experience, and then he went out and just looked like a minus 15,000 favorite in his UFC debut. He's taking on Christian Rodriguez here in this one. So we going right back. I mean, has he proven himself so much that you want to take him at minus 260?
You know what? Look, we keep calling him the kid, but he is not treating this like a kid. Yep. He is treating this whole scenario, the setting, everything, the bright lights, as if he's supposed to be here. And you know what? I think he really is. He is fighting someone in Rodriguez who's coming off a submission win, but then he lost his last fight against JSP, who's a very tough fighter. Rojas, though, came in that last fight, was fighting someone in Jay Pereira who's been around before, and just treated like he's been here for years. I think Rojas belongs here. He is scary if that fight goes to the ground. I am curious to see if it happens on the feet, what he is capable of doing, taking a shot, giving one. But I think Rojas gets this done. I think he's going to use his ground game. I think he's going to win.
He's fun to watch, man. You talk about a main card where it's just kind of like the energy is going to build, build, build. You got Rosas Jr., then you got Kevin Holland, Santiago Ponzinibbio, Rob Font, Adrian Yanez, and then Jorge Masvidal is going to make his walkout. I think it's just going to be one of those nights where the energy just crescendos through the roof. And as I mentioned, we're not going to go into depth on the Rob Font, Adrian Yanez, but I want you to go ahead and give out the rest of your picks for this main card. So quickly, we'll throw it up there for you and talk about your full picks for UFC 287 main card.
You got it. Main event, over 3.5 rounds. Co-main event, over 1.5. I think Masvidal's takedown defense and stand-up will get us there. Rob Font, Adrian Yanez. This is an interesting fight, I think mainly for Yanez. Big step up. Font is super durable. Starts off quick. We're going over 2.5 rounds there. I think you get the theme of where this is going with my bets for this card. Holland, Ponzinibbio. Holland's going to be a little careful here. Broke his hand against Wonder Boy. He's going to fight from a distance. Ponzinibbio has the ability to go to the ground. Over 1.5 there. And Rosas Jr., you know what? Let's take a shot on the kid.
All right, grab some coffee and clear your schedule on Saturday night because Ian believes it's going to be a late one with all of these overs. Let's jump into the prop of the week, which you introduced last month, and it was a heck of an idea. You've had great success at it. You're picking methods. We're really trying to capture a prop of the night. He is 3-0 so far since we introduced this to the show. Let's make it 4-0 on Saturday.
I'm into it. You know what? I'm going to go with a prospect here that I think has been flying under the radar for quite a bit. It's Ignacio Bahamondes. He has been super impressive. He came out in his last fight, got the win. You know what? This is a guy that really is extremely well-rounded, and I think he gets it done inside the distance against Trey Ogden, and we're going to get it at plus 120 odds here. Plus
120 on the prop of the night. I love it. So let's move on to the prelims of the evening. UFC 287. We're going to have you rapid fire through those. Give us your picks for the UFC 287 prelims. Again, you can find these on ESPN and ESPN+.
I'm going Chris Curtis over Kelvin Gastelum. Gastelum has just been on such a cold streak. Curtis, if he can throw volume, he will stuff the takedowns. I think he gets the win. Pinheiro over the Karate Hottie. I think Pinheiro is a prospect on the rise, and I think that Waterson is competitive. I just don't see it getting done. This one's going to be a fun fight. We keep hearing beat Joe Pyfer. I hope he's not for this one. I think GM3 is a very live underdog here. Carl Williams, that number's really high. He will go in our parlay. Lupi Goynez, same thing. Bahamondes inside the distance. Then we're going to go Nuremberg and Garcia under 2.5. And last but not least, give me Amorim inside the distance. There we go.
All right, we've already thrown a lot of action at you. Let's move on straight to the Parker's parlay of the night. What do we got from 287?
Well, we're going to sound a little bit here with Ignacio Bahamondes. I just think this is a great matchup for him. He's going to lead the way. We're also with Carl Williams. In his last fight, we saw him absolutely ragdoll his opponent. Great wrestler. He's going against the very familiar Chase Sherman. I know one of your favorites. And Carl Williams is going to wrestle him as well. Rosas Jr., I believe in him. And at that number, we're not risking it too much. And last but not least, look, I'm a Masvidal fan for a long time. I just think this is Gilbert Burns' time to be in the spotlight. That's going to be our parlay this week.
Yeah, you're right. You certainly have some favorites on this card, I can tell, and you put them in the parlay for plus money. Let's move on to the best bets for the evening.
You know what? Let's keep that streak going. Give me Pinheiro over Michelle Waterson. I am going to go Curtis here at a little bit of plus money. I think the takedown defense, I think as long as he's a little bit more active, throws leg kicks, he will slow down Kelvin Gastelum. Yanez Font, do not leave your seat. It is going to be a fun fight. I think it's going to go bell to bell. Burns and Masvidal, over 1.5. I think that is also going to be a long fight. If it gets done, it'll happen in the third. Main event, over 3.5 rounds. Let's go.
I love all of it. Okay, at the beginning of the year, I believe you told me that you were going to hit 5 long shot parlays by the time we hit the middle of the year. You have not hit one yet. We've come close, but you better get on it, Ian. You're kind of running up against the gun already. Where are we going with the long shot parlay?
I appreciate you pointing out my wins and my extreme flaws. This has been one of them. Hey, we call it a long shot for a reason. Give me GM3 at plus 170. Chris Curtis plus 105. Ponzinibbio, I think if he could close the distance and make this a wrestling match and a dirty boxing fight, I'm really curious to see how Holland's hand also holds up. Recovering from that really quick, and then we're going to go with Rosas by sub.
All right, a lot of action to take. It's going to be a great, outstanding card, and pay attention to that main event, man. I mean, I think that Jorge Masvidal is obviously getting a lot of attention. He has mentioned the word retirement, so obviously got to see what happens there, but man, high stakes in the main event. Can't wait to watch it. Hopefully we win you some money. And thanks for sticking with us. And hopefully you enjoyed a very profitable March. Come right back here. Next week we will be previewing UFC Fight Night, again, from Gambling Perspective on Best Bets. Enjoy the fight Saturday. We'll see you next week.